Hey everybody, Frank Kern here. In today's video, I'm literally going to show you what just may very be the single most powerful and effective marketing and sales methodology ever. And yes, I know that is an unbelievably huge claim in a world filled with hype. I want you to think about something. Imagine you took, let's say, the top 10 most popular internet marketing experts, and then you took, let's say, the top 10 most popular business book authors, specifically on the topic of like marketing and sales or whatever, and imagine that you added up all of their sales totals for their lives. And then imagine you multiply that figure by 10. The marketing method I'm going to show you is responsible in just 2 case studies alone for more than all of that revenue combined. Oh, and of course, we're going to talk in a car. You know, no internet marketing video is ever going to be complete without some guy flapping his gums, driving around in a $100,000 car. And what's funny about this is this isn't my car. I had to go across town and rent this thing for this video shoot today. This is a fancy pants BMW 750 IL. Pretty nice, too. So I'll explain why I've gone through all this trouble for you in a minute. But first, I want you to think of something. So let's talk about getting more customers and more sales for your business. So wouldn't it be cool if people loved your brand so much and they liked you so much in the marketplace that they'd be willing to pay up to 300% more for your products just because they were yours? And wouldn't it be cool if they would jump through all kinds of hoops? Not that that's even necessary, but they'd be willing to do just about anything just to be able to buy from you, that they really liked you that much. They had that much respect for what you were doing. Well, you can actually create that. And that's what the first part of this video is all about. So buying frenzies are fueled by a lot of stuff. And one of the things that fuel buying frenzies and massive desire is something called intrinsic value. Now, we make buying decisions based on value overall, but there's 2 types of value. First of all, there's something called practical value. That's the stuff that your product does, the practical application of your product, just like the practical application of a car is to get you from point A to point B, among other things, right? But the unseen value, the intrinsic value, that's what can really create the driving frenzy. Let me prove it to you. Let's consider cars, for example, right? So this BMW has a lot of good practical value. For example, it'll get you from point A to point B faster than walk-in. It'll keep you protected from the rain and the heat if you turn the AC on anyway. It's cool looking, you can put stuff in it, and it's better than riding the bus, right? Now this thing costs, let's see, the price tag on this is $100,125. And it's a pretty sweet car, right? So now let's compare the practical value of this 750 Li to this Rolls-Royce Ghost. And this is also not my car. This is my wife's car. I bought it for her last year because she's the greatest lady ever and she deserves the best. So if we look at the Rolls, this will also get you from point A to point B faster than walk-in, just like the BMW. It'll also keep you sheltered from the rain, etc., just like the BMW. You can put your stuff in there, just like the BMW. It's about the same size car. It's also arguably preferable to riding the bus or whatever, just like the BMW. But interestingly enough, this car is 300% more than the BMW. And what's also interesting is they're both on the inside very, very similar. In fact, the differences between these 2 cars are largely cosmetic. Yeah, sure, the Rolls-Royce has a bigger engine and everything, but if you go to the interior, they both have very, very nice leather. They both have state-of-the-art, super fancy computer stuff. Pretty similar. As a matter of fact, what's really funny is that one could argue that these cars are almost identical, especially considering that BMW owns Rolls-Royce. Industry gossip has it, in fact, that the Rolls-Royce Ghost shares the same chassis as the BMW 750 Li. So why do people clamor to spend 300% more, right? Well, in this video, I want to show you how to create that much intrinsic value in your business with your marketing. And it all starts before they ever even have an opportunity to buy from you. Let's get out of this heat and let me tell you a little story. Dude, I had to change. It was 1,000,000 degrees out there. Guys, I know we're supposed to try to look professional and everything because we just had all these fancy cars. But what you probably don't know is that we just had all these wildfires here in San Diego. So you probably noticed that the cars were all dusty and stuff. That's ash from these wildfires. It's 102 degrees outside right now, and I'm out there in a blazer like a dummy. So I thought I'd shoot with the blazer off, but my dang shirt was soaked through with sweat. Nobody wants to see me in a wet t-shirt. That's not the kind of videos that we've got going on over here. Okay, so let me show you how to do all of this kind of stuff, all right? So how do we do it? How do we have people wanting your stuff so much, just like Rolls-Royce, right? Just like all those high-end brands. You know, right now, somewhere, there are literally thousands of people online looking at pictures of Rolls-Royces and other cool stuff, saying, one day I'm going to have that. Wouldn't it be awesome to have that type of power in your marketplace? The good news is, there's a way that you can do it. The bad news is, the stuff that you're seeing done right now is not the way to get there. In fact, the polar opposite approach is much more effective. In fact, what I'm about to share with you might literally be the single most powerful marketing methodology ever. And it's all about giving before asking, which I know you've probably heard before, but let me tell you a little story. Imagine you do a promotion, right? You run an ad, you generate some leads, and you generate some sales, and it's pretty good. But then you go to the mailbox, and you open the mail, and you get handwritten letters, like a lot of them, and they say things like, "Thank God for you." And then they say other things like, "I've been looking for this information my entire life." And then imagine that you say, "Gosh, I'm going to run that ad again," and you do. And over time, it generates 3 million leads for you. And it generates literally millions of customers. That actually happened. That's how this entire methodology was born. It was conceived in 1948 by a guy named Charles Engle. Charles Engle was a frustrated journalist. He graduated with, I believe it was a philosophy degree from college, had a couple jobs in journalism. He had a little bit of marketing experience because he was the editor, I think, of a magazine about sales and marketing. But he got kind of frustrated with journalism and ended up taking a job as the advertising and sales manager for a little investment firm. So he's kind of a newbie, not a grizzled old marketing guy or whatever, and he gets this kind of crazy harebrained idea, I guess because he was a journalist. And he goes, instead of writing an ad talking about how great we are, why don't we just give away some cool information and then offer to give away some more cool information? And his bosses were like, "No, dude, that's not how we do it here. This is advertising, and we have to do advertising stuff." So they argue, he wins. He says, "Look, let's test it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I'll go away." And they say, "Okay, fine." So he writes this ad. They were scared to death of it. It was 6,500 words plus. The type was like that big. I'll show it to you in a minute. They're thinking there's no way this thing is going to work, right? Nonetheless, they decide to test it in a little regional local newspaper. It brings in its first week, 5,000 leads. Now, this is the 40s. So in order to respond, people had to get home, clip some stuff out and write a letter and send it off to the company. 5,000 people. They're like, maybe this guy's onto something. Over the course of the next few years, it generated 3 million leads. It generated literally millions of customers, and it took that little boutique investment firm to becoming one of the largest brands in the financial services industry today. That company is Merrill Lynch. And that ad is what I want to go over with you really quickly, because this is a strategy that you can use to dramatically increase the amount of people who are pulled towards your business. And they've literally gone on to sell billions of dollars. Now, the ad that started it all is the ad that you see on your screen. And the good news is, this approach that I'm about to walk you through has been horribly neglected over the years, but it might work better than anything you've ever seen before. It's up to you to test it. Let me show you how to do it. So the first thing I want you to know is that you can use this in all types of different media. Back then, obviously, they didn't have the internet, but you can use this approach in email. You can use it in blog posts. You can use it in videos. You can use it as Facebook posts. And of course, you can use it as standalone articles and ads put on a regular old web page. Now, it begins with a brilliantly written headline that you could model today to increase your readership. The classic headline read, "What everybody ought to know about the stock and bond business." And it's a great headline because it uses something in NLP that they call presupposition. It presupposes that everyone wants to know stuff about the stock and bond business, and it presupposes there's stuff that you don't know, which of course makes you want to know it. So how could you model it? Well, a couple of examples. What every woman over 40 ought to know about getting fit. What every newly divorced father ought to know about online dating. It goes on and on and on, right? Now, you and I have the ability to reach tiny segments of specific niche markets, so we can really customize that approach. But here's where it begins to get really, really powerful. Where your competition and where everyone else is trying to pretend like they don't want to sell anything or whatever, this ad immediately makes two damaging admissions. So have a look below the headline. The first little blurb you're going to see there is a subhead that says some plain talk about a simple business that often sounds complicated. The next thing you're going to see is that big box that says why we're publishing this information. Here's why that was brilliant, and that approach is absolutely priceless, and that should be modeled by you so you can increase your trust in your marketplace and ultimately your sales. You see, what those two little pieces of the ad did is they addressed reader skepticism. Listen, nobody likes marketers, right? I mean, no one believes us. There was a book out there that was called All Marketers Are Liars, for God's sake. It was written by a marketer. So what do you think? Naturally, anyone who reads anything, especially online, is going to be skeptical. Well, the dumb marketer ignores it, kind of like a dumb traveler would ignore the current in a raging river and then just step in, hoping that everything is going to be okay. The smart marketer acknowledges the skepticism, admits anything damaging that the reader might need to know about, and then just allows, metaphorically, that river to take its natural course. So, in the language used in this thing, the reader, skepticism number one, is going to be like, wait a minute, I always thought stocks and stuff were confusing. First thing they say right there under the headline is, this is a simple business that often sounds confusing, thus acknowledging that skepticism. Second thing they do is they acknowledge the undoubtable voice in the reader's mind, which is, why are they publishing this information? If they didn't acknowledge these two pieces of skepticism, the reader's mind would scream so loudly, why, and what about my skepticism, that even if they read the rest of the ad, they wouldn't really be able to absorb the message. Does that make sense? Good. Let's move on. So the next thing you'll notice about this ad is that it's really not masterful copy. And that, thank God, is good news, because look, you're right. Writing copy is very, very hard. But when you examine this ad, you'll see that all it really is a series of well-organized answers to questions that the reader probably has, which is another way of doing two things. Number one, overcoming skepticism. Every little bolded question you see that I've circled is essentially a concern that the reader might have. Number two is providing value well in the advance of ever asking for a sale or anything in return. This strategy is priceless. So now let's look at the very end of the ad. So as you can see, all the body copy, no spectacular copy in there, no hooks, no crazy guarantees, no hype, no nothing, right? Just good coolness in the marketplace. Now, still a lead generation ad. We want the reader to do something. Notice how masterfully they do this. It's not necessarily the copy itself that's so good, it's the overall approach. The way they phrase the call to action, which of course is to just let us know if you want more information, thus becoming a lead so we can sell you something, right? The way they phrase it is beautiful. It says, you're probably going to have more questions. Naturally, this isn't everything we could tell you about the stock and bond business, because if we printed everything we could know, it would take up several volumes. But if you would like a little booklet with more information, and if you would like this ad in a pamphlet form, it's yours, no problem. Just write to us and we'll send it right to you. This whole approach worked beautifully. It took Merrill Lynch from a little firm to having literally millions of customers and 3 million leads just from this one ad. But you know what? The ad was promptly forgotten, just like so much stuff that works today. Just like today, back then, people in marketing and business were obsessed with shiny objects. But not one man. There was a former British chef that went on to become the greatest ad man in the history of the world. He discovered this, and then he perfected it. That man's name was David Ogilvy. And David Ogilvy saw this ad, and he perfected the approach, and he created a process for it. And he almost created what I believe to be a template. And he used that template, and he created a series of 17 ads to promote his own ad agency. That ad agency is still around today. It's called Ogilvy and Mather. And those 17 ads that he created, using his perfected template version of this approach, they helped Ogilvy and Mather sell over $1.4 billion worth of advertising, and this was in the 70s. Like I said, they're still a major global brand in advertising today. And here's what I've got for you. Now, I went out and I got those 17 ads of David Ogilvy's, and I analyzed all of them, and I picked out the ones that were historically regarded as the most powerful, and I analyzed those, and I found all of their commonalities, and I created an ad in my own business based on those commonalities, and it worked incredibly well. So then I went back to them, analyzed them some more, and created a template, and I'm going to give you that template right now in this video today. I'm also going to give you the swipe file that I analyzed, and I'm going to show you the ad that I wrote based on it and give you the full case study on that. And I've created a complete training for you that shows you how to use all this stuff so you can create this type of advertising right now, today. So let's go ahead, ease on over to the computer, and get to work. Hey everybody, Frank Kern here. Thanks so much for checking out this video and this swipe file, and boy have I got some really cool stuff for you today. So what you see on your screen are 3 classic David Ogilvy ads, and there's a little backstory to this. And in this video, I'm going to give you a little case study on how I modeled these ads and had some really, really good success, and then kind of came back to these ads and looked at them after that success and noticed there's some commonalities, and I've created, based on all these commonalities, a template for you to use in your business so you can make ads like this and have really good luck too. That's the goal. So here's the thing. These ads all worked really, really well for David Ogilvy. It helped grow his ad agency, Ogilvy and Mather, to good God knows how much. Back in 1970-something, when this ad was run, they had already sold $1.48 billion worth of advertising, and God knows how much he sold for his clients based on or using the principles that he even talks about in these very ads. So I got interested in this, obviously, because who wouldn't want to study someone with such unbelievable results? And I created a little ad based on what I saw him doing, and that's what you see right here. So I mentioned I would give you a case study, and here it is. So I looked at the Ogilvy ads, and I analyzed what they all had in common to a degree, and I decided to model them. So I created this article. What's really, really awesome about this article is 2 things. Number one, the response. This got me over 3,000 some odd webinar registrants, and they bought stuff, which was great. So the profits from this were huge. But another thing that happened is what you really, really want to have happen in addition to response, and that is, if we scroll down here to the bottom, I had 120 some odd people write me and tell me really nice things and tell me how much they enjoyed my advertising. So I was able to create value just in the advertising in and of itself, and that's a really, really important thing that you want to do for positioning of your brand. The more goodwill you have, the more money I think you can make, because the more responsive people are going to be to the promotions that you write. So, look, I mean, this lady wrote, "Frank, this is awesome. That's very nice. Look, always full of glorious nuggets, excellent quality content, awesome stuff, great stuff. When you talk, I listen. Frank rocked the house again." So that's all very, very good. In addition to the great response that this ad had, right? So the purpose of this video is to show you how to model David Ogilvy's ads to create an ad that's even better than this one. Because when I wrote this one, I hadn't really learned all of the commonalities of the Ogilvy ads I'm about to walk you through. And yes, of course, I've created a template for you to help make this process a lot easier for you so you can model these ads quickly. All right, let's see here. So there we go. My little screen marker thing appears to be working. The first thing they all have in common is the how-to headline. So this one says how to create advertising that sells. This is a very, very famous ad of his. And this one says how to create industrial advertising that sells. So these 3 ads, I'm just showing you 2 on the screen right now because it's easier to see, they all have a how-to style headline, and that's important because people want content and people all have questions and people all want results, and how-to implies that you're going to help them get some results. And incidentally, if you actually read these, and of course I've given you links to these ads on this page here, you can see that the information in this is very, very helpful and useful, which is cool. But let's continue on. The second thing that they have in common is that they each have something called a qualifying statement. And what this qualifying statement does is it sells the reader on why they should read this ad by explaining why you should be listening to David Ogilvy, right? So This one says Ogilvy and Mather has created over $1.48 billion worth of advertising. That is just ridiculous, isn't it? And spent $4.9 million tracking the results. Here, with all the dogmatism of brevity, are 38 of the things we have learned. Now, look, anyone interested in advertising is going to want to read that just based on this statement. It's an incredible qualifying statement. I mean, wouldn't you want to learn the results of $4.9 million worth of tracking and advertising? Heck yeah, who wouldn't, right? Now, over here on the how to create industrial advertising that sells, he did the same thing. Ogilvy and Mather has created industrial advertising for over 200 of our clients in 30 countries. Here, again, with all the dogmatism of brevity, are some of the ways we have learned to get the best results. So that's very, very powerful. And let's see here, I'll get rid of this little stuff. The other ad, the third ad, which is less popular and harder to find, he does it again. This one is the ad where he says how direct response advertising can increase your sales and profits. And this one says Ogilvy and Mather has created more than $150 million worth of direct response advertising in mail and media for the American Express Company and all these other dudes. In the process, we've learned that direct response advertising can help sell $750,000 jet airplanes as well as 25-cent packets of flour seeds, right? So all three of these ads have that initial qualifying introduction that makes the reader say, damn, I should pay attention. This is pretty important stuff, right? So that's a big deal. Now let's go on to the third part in what I believe to be a formulaic approach for these ads, and that is the numbered list. So every one of these ads has a numbered list, which I think is really great because what do we naturally want to do when we see a numbered list? Well, we want to read it, right? It's kind of hard to ignore. I mean, we've been reading numbered lists our entire lives, our to-do lists, our homework lists, tests in school, you name it, right? So it's kind of impossible not to follow a numbered list, which is fantastic. Another thing that we'll notice in the formulaic process about all of this is in relation to the numbered list, we also have the beginning of each item in the list is a punchy sentence and it is bolded. And the reason this is important is because it directs the eye straight to that item. And by item, I mean the thing that the number is about, right? So in this case, use your best people would be an item. Item number 1. Item number 2 would be prove your case right here in this ad. The next thing I want to point out to you is that he has subheads. And in many cases, in fact, all cases, each subhead is actually a statement of a common question that the reader might have, but it just simply doesn't have the question mark. So clearly this one right here, what works best in television could be a question from the reader. Okay, this is great, but you're over here talking about this other type of ads, but what about television, right? Or, okay, how do we profit on new opportunities using direct marketing if I want to launch a new product or whatever, right? And so he just simply reframes that question as a subhead. So he does that a lot in these ads as well. Now, there's something that's very, very interesting, and I think that only time and testing is going to tell. When it comes to these ads of David Ogilvy's, get rid of this for you, you will notice that 2 of them, here we go, 2 of them have pictures, right? So you got pictures right here, you have pictures right here, and of course, in most cases, each picture has a caption, and if you study print ads at all, you'll know that captions get read a lot in advertising. It is one of the top read things. Captions that are displayed under pictures and graphics get really read a lot. So it would lead me to believe that the inclusion of pictures is probably going to give you a higher response. However, I can't say that for sure for 2 reasons. Number 1, I haven't personally tested it, and number 2, this ad, which is the most popular and legendary ad in this series, does not have pictures. And I would believe that because people who are really, really hardcore about advertising and marketing have access to all of this kind of stuff, that this one must have worked the best because this is the one that is so talked about and so referenced when people discuss Ogilvy and his house ad series. So I can't tell you really which approach is going to work best. I urge you to split test. And I urge you to just launch whichever one is easiest and fastest for you to launch, whether it's pictures or not, is irrelevant. Whichever one can get you to market fastest, that's the one you should use. So as we look at the formula, right? So to reiterate this formulated process, step number one, you have a how-to headline. Step number two, you have the qualifying opening statement. Step number three, you have the numbered list, right? Step number four is you have these short, punchy sentences to begin each numbered list. And step number five is these are all bolded. And this really, really gets the reader's attention. Step number six is that you have subheads in your ad that are essentially restating questions that your reader might have. And this is essentially saying that you're answering these questions now, which you are. So that brings us now to the final step in this type of advertising, which I really firmly believe is the best lead gen advertising you can do. And that is the good old call to action. So in all three of these ads, he essentially says, hey, this isn't everything I have to show you. This is essentially all I've got room to show you in this ad here. So he goes, these findings apply. Look, this is where I'm talking about, by the way. I'll try to zoom in for you. These findings apply to most categories of products, but not all, right? And this one, he says right here, the body of our experience, which can only be hinted at in the space available here, is revealed in a slide presentation. What Ogilvy and Mather has learned about direct response advertising and marketing. To arrange a presentation, please mail the coupon today, etc. And in this one, it is a little less aggressive. Not that that first method was aggressive, but here's the call to action right here. And he basically says these are only a few of the ways to make industrial advertising more effective. Ogilvy and Mather has a 1-hour slide presentation with 75 more facts that can help make the difference between outstanding and mediocre industrial advertising. Now, what's interesting is Ogilvy's use of the word facts here and his use really formulaically almost of bulleted lists. All of this really is a demonstration on his opinion of facts versus emotion. So right now, you probably are kind of bombarded with really quote-unquote information from a bunch of people claiming to be marketing experts. And whether or not they actually are is a discussion for another day. But here's something that's pretty interesting to take note of, all right? So most of these guys are saying, hey, you know what really sells is story. You need to tell stories. Let's really get emotional. Here's a bunch of power words that you can use in your sales copy and all of that kind of stuff. And what's funny is David Ogilvy kind of thought the opposite was true. As a matter of fact, if you look right here in this How to Create Advertising That Sells ad, you can see point number 23, he says factual commercials tend to be more effective than emotional commercials, which is almost completely opposite of what people are telling you today. And what's interesting is usually, what's the old saying goes, you know, when you see everybody running one way, if you run the other way, you're probably going to be better off, you know. But here's what's interesting to really think about. If you took like every internet guru and every marketing guru, whether they're online or off, and every contemporary marketing author, and you got them all in a room together and you said, okay, fellas and ladies, of course, too, write down how many sales you generated, you know, with your marketing and stuff. And they all did. And then they all added it together to have one total amount of sales. And they multiplied that total by 10. I bet you'd be less than what David Ogilvy sold with his ads. So with that in mind, I'm going to probably lean more towards what this guy says to do because it simply works. And the only way we can really know is to test it, of course, in our own market. So let me show you real quickly how you can test this out. I've created a template for you to use, and I want to show it to you really quick and walk you through it. Let's get going. Here's the template, and here's the article that I created after sort of checking Ogilvy out. So the timeline on all of this is this. I've been interested in David Ogilvy for years, and I've modeled some of my stuff after him. This is the first time I ever really created an ad based on what I saw. So I checked out his stuff, I reread some of his books, I looked at his ads, and I, in a hurry, made this little ad that you see right here. This ad worked incredibly well. I've already shown you some of the nice comments that it got. It got 3,000 plus people to register for a webinar. Those people bought a lot of stuff. Hands down, great success. After this ad worked, I went back and revisited the Ogilvy ads and said, wait a minute, okay, I bet there's even more to this than I've realized, right? And that's when I learned all the commonalities I just pointed out to you. So the template that I'm giving you is a little bit different than my ad. Let me point out the commonalities and the differences, and then why I suggest you do it the way I have in this template. First of all, we start with the commonalities. Both of them have the good old how-to headline. I did not put my name here, which was dumb. I probably should have. I mean, I am an egomaniacal internet marketing guru guy. For God's sake, I want to see my name everywhere, right? So I think you should put your name here. If you're a thought leader, definitely your name. If you're representing a big company, maybe the company name. Best to humanize it, in my opinion. Most of his stuff said by David Ogilvy. Now, I did not have a qualifying statement in mind, and that's the only reason I didn't have one in there is because I didn't think to put one in there. I hadn't analyzed it as much. I just kind of created the ad and went and saw what happens. So I think you should create and put a qualifying statement in there. I think there's a reason Ogilvy did it in every single one of those ads I showed you. They probably worked, right? Man was no dummy, clearly by the sales figures. The other difference is mine does not have a bulleted list. I hadn't realized that all of his ads had that bulleted factual list. So that's why I have in this template advised you to create a bulleted list. And in fact, my bulleted list that I give you in this template is actually an instruction manual on how to write the body copy of your ad. So I won't make this video about that. You can just really read it. It's very simple. The next thing I want to show you is the way that I sold the opt-in here. You and I have dramatically more advantages than David Ogilvy did because we're online, and therefore people can respond with the click of a mouse, right? They can instantly respond, whereas when he was writing these print ads, they had to walk to the phone and call somebody, God forbid, or maybe even send something in the mail, which of course is practically unheard of today. So we have a lot of opportunity to sell the opt-in, right? So in my ad, and what I'm advising you to do in yours as well, is I want you to have multiple links to your opt-in form. If you look at my ad, if you click on this, it just goes to a separate page with an opt-in form. I think a better thing to do is to use something called lead boxes. Now, if you look at point number 10 in the little template that I gave you, you can click on the link that says lead boxes and learn more about them and how to get them. They're not costly and they're very easy to set up. Basically, a lead box is when you click the hyperlink on a website, a little opt-in form will just appear right here in the middle of the page, and it's kind of sneaky and it's cool, and I think it'll get better response. Of course, you should test it, right? Another thing I want to point out is I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 places that they can click to opt in. I'm really selling it hard, not in a hypey way, but I'm just giving them all manner of opportunities to click to opt in. I recommend that you do that in your ad as well. If you don't want to do text links to your ad, you could do, of course, a opt-in box like I've done as an example here in the template, although I really think that the text links are probably going to outperform that. I use text links in mine and it worked very, very, very well. Of course, always use that language pattern I showed you of David Ogilvy's, and of course you can download a couple of those ads with the links I provided below this video, so you can really use his language patterns to model in your own ad. But listen, this approach worked very, very, very well, and it got lots of webinar registrants, and equally as importantly, 120 people basically wrote in saying, hey, this is great, thank you so much, which is kind of unheard of today. Most people don't like advertising. This was an advertising that got the digital equivalent of a thank you note, right? So that's a pretty big deal. So if you like this kind of stuff, I have something really, really cool for you. The series of videos that I've created for you is part of a campaign to generate interest and build value for a new class that I'm releasing called Mass Conversion. Now, Mass Conversion is arguably the single most effective training you can get on how to generate leads in a way that makes your entire marketplace like you, multiple ways, not just the one I've shown you here. And it also shows you how to use behavioral dynamic response marketing to sell things to those leads. And that is a very, very new and very, very cool cool type of marketing that simply did not exist back when David Ogilvy was doing this. The technology wasn't there. So basically what I'm going to teach you to do in mass conversion is utilize the great psychological strategies that have been proven time and time and time again by real marketing masters. And then we're going to integrate cool modern tech stuff with it to make it even more effective, like 10x. And by the way, the tech stuff is easy tech stuff. I do it my own, so it's not like you have to be a genius to figure this out. It's usually like press buttons and drag and drop type of stuff. So if you want to be thought of as the good guy in your marketplace, if you want to really attract not just subscribers, but if you want to attract customers, and if you want to learn how to turn those subscribers into customers in a way that they find that is valuable to them, even in and of itself, meaning if they find your marketing to be so good that they actually feel it's something of value, kind of like the way you hopefully feel about this video, right? If you want to learn how to do that, then mass conversion is for you. It is not for sale right now, and you will get an early notification of when it's available if you want to. And you should see under this video a little button where you can click it and you can opt in for my early bird list. Now, the reason you're going to want to do that is twofold. Number one, you can